And we're live. Here we are, everybody. Welcome, 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 everybody. Stream on in, my friends. The water is fine, and we have an excellent show for everyone. I'm going to go ahead and introduce things. GM, everyone, and welcome to Avalanche Live. I am your host, Breevy, and today we have an exciting show in store for you folks. We're entering in an era where data sovereignty is mattering more than ever. And the Kave Cloud is pioneering a new storage model, one that gives builders verifiable control, real-time programmability, and long-term durability, all powered by Avalanche and Filecoin. And today we're going to be breaking down how all of that works. And to help me do that, I'm joined by some absolute stars. We have Justin Fittis, Senior Ecosystem Growth Associate over at Ava Labs. Say what's up, my friend.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me, Brevy.
Hey, it's no problem, my friend. Thank you for coming on. And I'm also joined by another star here. We have Stefan Vervat, CEO and co-founder of Akave. Say what's up, my friend.
What's up, everyone? Welcome.
Hey. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm super excited for this one. Looks like we got some comments in there. Gustavo is ready. Gustavo is ready, so I'm not going to tease Gustavo too much. We're going to get straight into it. Stefan, can you tell me, like, what is Akave and kind of what inspired you to start building a decentralized storage network?
Yeah. I mean, maybe a little bit of a history there. I was at Filecoin for a couple of years, and one of the things we kind of heard over and over again was that users that wanted to use decentralized storage wanted familiar APIs. They actually didn't want to change their existing workloads. They wanted to just point it to decentralized storage. And for that, we had to build Akave, because Akave is enabling enterprise-grade functionality on a decentralized infrastructure. And so it makes it a lot easier for users to just point their existing applications and move their data into a secure and enterprise-grade infra. And it's really like born from continuously hearing that request that we said, okay, let's go build this startup, because we do see a value of blockchain coming together with the traditional Web 2 workloads, specifically where you see more AI workloads that do care about immutability, care about verifiability, care about tamper-proof systems. And that's sort of like where, the blockchain stack interacts or kind of brings value into Web 2 workloads.
For sure. And especially with AI becoming obviously a major industry, it just blew up within like the last few years. Is that kind of the reason why you felt like right now was the time to launch Akave Cloud, or what kind of went into that decision?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because like you always wonder, like, why would I do this? Well, obviously, because I think there's a big market, there's a big opportunity personally, and also like you want to make a difference. But right now, what we're seeing is that thanks to this new AI wave, a lot more users, businesses are a lot more sensitive about who hosts their data. And mostly it's driven by the need to monetize or the interest to, do something with their data that could help benefit their business, right? Whether it's like improving, usability for their consumers, or it's finding new insights that allow you to be more competitive, or it's just lowering costs in general, by replacing, unfortunately, like human labor with like AI enabled or AI agents that are trained on your own private data sets. So as part of that, what we're also seeing is that those enterprises are also more cost sensitive, and they want to take control back over their data sets. And so this is a good time to go build a decentralized storage network, because this is exactly what we are providing, right? We're providing more controls to the enterprise. And if you look at the past 7-8 years, the hyperscalers have not changed their pricing model. Like if you look at the cost of storing in AWS, for example, AWS S3, that price has been static for 7 to 8 years. Yet the resources or the hard drives and the underlying infrastructure has improved in efficiency, yet that hasn't been passed on to the end user. And why is that? Because they don't have to. It's there's a few large entities that sort of control 80% of the market. And now what we're seeing is there is more of a movement towards sovereign data infrastructure as well, definitely in Europe, where you see more entities moving out of hyperscalers because data has to be stored within a country, or data has to follow certain compliance requirements. And it's not like these hyperscalers cannot offer it, but in certain cases they're not available, they're not present in certain countries. That's one. And two, there's a mental shift happening too, where users are like, or businesses are just more interested in like taking back controls because they're just using their data more often. And as you know, like when you're moving data outside of the cloud today, you pay for that. These vendors have a real vendor lock-in, and so there's new models, there's new solutions that we can offer that do not require you to pay these high egress, but instead help you with monetizing your data and actually putting it to work. And so that's where I believe the market is going to move towards, is that even private data sets, if you can unlock those and make those accessible for purchase or temporary access, and allow you to make money on it in the long term, that is where the value is also outshining, or like it's something that cloud providers today don't think about, because their whole business model is about, it's cheap to move in, it's cheap to use, but if you move it out, you pay an arm, and a leg, basically.
It's kind of through my research, I was figuring that out, because I had no idea that in order to access their own data, that they had to pay these fees.
Yeah, you pay for it. Kind of depends how you use it. If you stay within the cloud and you stay within a region, it's fine, but you still need to pay for data transfers between a cold and a hot tier. But definitely when you move out of the cloud, let's say you're sharing data sets, or you're trying to sell data sets, right? Let's say, and that person is pulling that data off your service, you're paying $90 per terabyte just to Amazon if you want to move that out. And then if it's coming from an archive, you also have to pay to move from an archive to a hot tier, and then you pay to move from a hot tier to outside of AWS. And it's called, we call them data locks or data walls, or whatever you call it. The point is that's up for disruption, because every customer I talk to, they're complaining about this, and it's typically driven because they want to do more stuff with their data, and that's when they start realizing, oh, okay, maybe I should look at an alternative, or maybe I shouldn't be so locked in with that one vendor because I want to negotiate better terms with a new compute farm that showed up around the corner. I mean, you're seeing a lot more compute farms, GPU compute farms showing up now. And when you're running AI, you don't want to purchase all of that. You want to buy it when you need it, and you want to buy it at the lowest cost when you need it. And so having those options is important. And when you want to use the GPUs, you have to move your data to it, right? And so that's when the cost typically comes into play. And so what we're building with Akave is there's no egress cost. So it's really taking the ecosystem, instead of building everything from a centralized perspective, right? You're allowing the ecosystem to bring their shared infrastructure to the table. And what we're seeing is today, and that's actually also like very cool to see, right? Because when I was at Filecoin, like 4 years ago, infrastructure providers like miners, right? They started off, Bitcoin was like, had some of the first miners, and Ethereum. And so now what we were seeing with Filecoin is like more institutional grade or enterprise grade miners, quote unquote, that also took on storage and compute infrastructure. And those node providers, a lot of them have actually built a real business, like an enterprise grade business, meaning they're running an enterprise grade data centers. They actually make money, and they serve multiple networks. And for them, storage is one piece, one important piece. Compute is another, and then you have validator nodes that they're running and indexers. And so it becomes like a part of their stack. And, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that was harder to find. Now that infrastructure, those node providers are knocking on my door, right? And they're like, hey, if you need infrastructure, we've got it, And so that's amazing. That wasn't there because 5 years ago, that was still being built.
Stefan, can I jump in here really quick, because I've been holding my tongue but excited to talk about it. So my background, well, first of all, I work at Ava Labs. I've been here for 3 years. Before that, I was working for Amazon Web Services, one of the largest hyperscale cloud that you talk about quite a bit. So being S3 compatible means that you're Amazon S3 compatible, where you have S3 buckets and the multiple storage tiers that Stefan has talked about. But one thing that was really, really interesting when we first started talking, Stefan, and I think the real hook that kind of grabbed me in, knowing AWS so well, knowing the pricing models, and how customers are generally very unhappy with pricing models over a long enough period of time, or if they actually want to do anything useful with that data and have it leave AWS. But help me understand the decision to make sure that a Kave was S3 compatible, because I think that's maybe the biggest unlock here, is that you guys can go in and users can just pay that one-time CapEx data egress cost to get their data out of S3 into a Kave. And I think that, you were alluding to it just now, but in a DePIN network where supply, maybe there's a glut of supply, you have a lot of institutional and enterprise folks who run these data centers that have the supply, but having the actual demand, I think is the key unlock, and giving you the S3 compatibility, I think is a really, really good way. And clearly you've already shown product market fit. So just help me understand how you guys arrived at that decision to really make sure that you were S3 compatible, and like where you see that going from there.
Yeah, no, thanks for laying the ground here. Look, at Protocol Labs, where I was, we built IPFS. IPFS is content addressable hashing, right? Like it's all based on cryptographic hashes. And that's also, if you look at just in general, the crypto space, right? I sometimes have to explain people, crypto stands for cryptography, right? So, but the biggest problem is that they just, like users in general, even DePIN networks, right? There's a bunch of DePIN networks we worked with and are working with today. They're still storing in the cloud, and it's because they're focused on minting their tokens. They're building their ecosystem. They're building their specialized devices that are collecting data sets at the edge. But the backend infrastructure, they're still using existing Web2 tools. And so even though the cryptographic hash that provides you with immutability and a guarantee of data integrity, which is super important, definitely now more than before with LLMs, because if you have to prove that you use certain data sets, certain weights, you got to make sure that you can prove the original, or you want to be able to prove that those are the data sets and the LLMs and the models and the weights that you used. But the challenge was always that the tooling only worked with S3 or object RESTful interfaces, because one, we offer a CLI, we offer a Rust interface, we offer a Python interface, but in the end, these developers or these builders, they didn't want to focus on building against another API to store their data. They just wanted to transition it from AWS in a seamless way and get all the benefits from what blockchain provides, like the transparency, the verifiability, immutability. And so that's exactly what we did. It's because today, for example, we build an S3 compatible interface, which, by the way, takes a lot of work. And you have more than 14 engineers been building on this, so it's been a journey. And now, what we can do is we can provide you with the immutable hash. So you can store data through an S3 interface. So you can connect your existing applications, like even Snowflake is qualified, because we're one of the first, if not the first, decentralized stack that is qualified with Snowflake. Cloud Mount or rClone. There's a whole bunch of backup solutions as well that we're integrating right now. There's even startups that are looking to stream video content. And even those streaming solutions, right, they're built on S3. So even they're looking for S3. And then there's analytics companies we work with that are storing DuckDB and Parquet files. Because if you start doing analytics, you store these files in these larger containered files. And so the point is that the way the unlock happens here is we make it very easy to take your existing application, point it to a Kave endpoint, and you get the immutable hash back through the API. And you can see that immutable hash on chain, on the Avalanche chain. So you have full end-to-end transparency, and you have, which is super important, right? Because, you know, as a native crypto person, I mean, you also want to see, you know, where it's stored on the blockchain. So you have an on-chain proof, and you can see every state of the file and so on. So you get both. And the reason why we built the Kave Cloud is because even though, you know, our stack is called the Kave network, but we build a Kave Cloud because even in the by talking to Deepin Networks, even they asked for a hosted version. They said, can you host a version for us? Meaning, can you host your Kave nodes for us as a way for us to easily start in the same way as we're using cloud today. And then our strategy is for any community member eventually to run their own Kave nodes and their Kave endpoints, so that anyone in the ecosystem today that's, let's say, running Avalanche validators, is doing backups of chain data, or is doing backups for enterprise customers, they will be able to run a Kave nodes, and they will be able to run the Kave endpoints as well that allow them to offer an S3 compatible service. Because in my mind, those will be the new service providers in this new world, where traditional service providers will have to adjust or will have to jump on the crypto wagon, in my opinion, because there's already been so much change happening in infrastructure that, there's just, if they don't, they will lose on an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I talk a lot, so please, stop me.
Good, and you give me some immediate follow-up questions. So, Brevi, I hope you don't mind my hijacking of this real quick. But you know, in the name, it's a Kave Cloud, and you alluded to it a number of different times that you guys are working with different DePIN platforms and other suppliers of not just storage capacity, but also compute. I know that right now a Kave Cloud is primarily focused on storage, which I think is a unique differentiator because it's a lot harder of a problem than decentralized compute. But help me understand on how, what is like the long tail vision of a Kave? How do you guys plan on competing directly with hyperscalers? Excuse me. You're going directly toe to toe with them on the storage front. But what does the compute side look like? What does the analytics side look like? What other managed services do you plan on expanding into in the future? Or are you going to focus just solely on the storage side, which I think is still a massive market?
Yeah. I think so. First of all, it's very important to have compute in the picture, because users are, I was on a customer call this week where they're like, hey, we need to compute. And typically they already have some partners figured out, because what we're seeing is that the compute players as well there's a lot more compute players showing up. And that's, when I say, I'm not just talking about Web3, I'm talking about just in general in the market, because you're seeing more localized compute farms, or you're seeing existing infra providers focusing on GPUs and offering that in these specialized hubs that they have, or locations where they have more presence of GPUs. And so what we're seeing is our short-term goal is to continue to partner with existing compute partners. Because there is no single solution that solves all the problems. And because Kave is very easy to integrate, because we're running on containers, we can more easily integrate in an existing compute cloud where storage is required as a solution for users to store their LLMs or store their generated AI data or backups, you name it. So our first approach is work with the existing compute partners. That's also why we worked with Snowflake, because Snowflake is a very well established multi-billion-dollar compute business, right? They do analytics, they offer compute services for data analytics and AI. And so it is a combination of Web 2 compute and then also Web 3 compute partners. So we are also working with some Web 3 compute partners. Can't mention yet which ones, but again, there as well, we're seeing very similar demand, meaning users start using the compute. Initially, it starts as a proof of concept, then it becomes like a small production environment, and then people are starting to take it serious, and they also want to hold their assets outside of the cloud. And that's where we're seeing a lot more interest. Long term, because the Kaveh cloud is very flexible, I can see us also adding more services, either with or built by ourselves, that are compute centric. But right now, we're very focused on providing the storage layer, because Justin, like you said, it's not an easy solution or an easy problems to solve. And why is that? It is because when you're running compute, you're executing a transaction, right? And once the transaction is completed, yes, you have to do it safely and performing, and you need to perform well. But in the end, you can just pull that resource out of the equation and you can move on with your life. But on storage, you're hosting someone's assets, right? Someone's data assets, and you have to, guarantee that over time that the data integrity was maintained, the assets was secured. And so there's a lot more compliance as well involved. And so it is a harder nut to crack, which is also why there hasn't been a single solution that truly solved that storage problem. Yes, there are solutions out there that focus on certain areas, but our goal is to make it as easy as possible for users to make that transition, and then upsell the possibilities of smart contracts, and also the ability to compute over your data through using our APIs, because we have an S3 interface, but we also have an SDK, a REST SDK for agents, because we've done like a few hackathons, and we had close to 100 projects in these hackathons building on a Kaveh. And it's interesting when you look at most of these new projects, they're either building a data marketplace, they're either trying to capture and sell data, and two, they're building AI agents. And so their main request typically was, simple APIs to ingest, and then the programmability aspect, so basically like the need for a wallet, the need for controls that they could pass on to an agent to do something with that data. And I think that's where the future is, even in enterprise, but there's still very far out. So we start with like, hey, lower cost, same experience, more secure. And there's a lot more opportunity down the road to monetize your data sets by using smart contracts. But most of them are still in that first bucket.
Actually, real quick, Stefan, can you go over the cost savings? Because when you said $90 per terabyte, kind of scared me, because not obviously for Kaveh, but for like the overall industry. Yeah, $90 per terabyte, that's insane. Like for the people out there, just so you know, at my former company, we went to Avalanche Summit and we recorded a bunch of videos for a recap video. And that one, about 3 days worth of recording, it was about 300, 400 gigs of storage, which is absolutely insane. Yeah. So like 1 terabyte for an entire enterprise company is okay. But anyway, but yes, could you talk a little bit about the cost savings? Like, how do you save the costs, and like what are the cost savings?
Yeah. I mean, first, most of the costs are coming from, or if you look at the hyperscalers, right? Most of the cost is coming from moving data out of the cloud. If you want to share data out and use certain resources outside of the cloud, I mean, that's where most of the savings are coming from. Plus, the other savings are coming from the fact that in Amazon, for example, you pay $23 per terabytes per month to store data in an S3 bucket. In ours, it's $14.99, and it's a flat fee. $14.99 per terabyte per month is sort of like a good balance between having a high performing storage infrastructure that you can use without paying extra egress. There are other solutions out there that drop the price much lower, but they don't allow you to retrieve that data unlimited. So they will put a cap on it. So they may sell it for $6, but if you retrieve more than 100% per month, you pay an extra $7. So then you're like back to higher prices. And so the feedback we have received from customers is that one thing they hate is let's say they're budgeting their infrastructure costs, and they just don't know how much it's going to cost next month because they don't know how many retrievals or how often these AI engineers are running workloads on these data sets. So what they hate is like uncertainty. So they rather pay a fixed price that just captures everything like retrievals and storing than trying to go for the lowest cost and then be surprised with a big bill. Which also the other feedback we're getting from some AWS users is that it's so complicated these days to really figure out what your actual cost is, because there's all these triggers, right? That makes it hard too. So simplicity is important. And so that's our focus. Very simple, fixed price, all you can eat, and then over time we can figure out other pricing models. And the goal here too is that as we grow the network, that node providers that offer services beyond just infrastructure as a node provider, because some of them are, right? Some of them are just pure node providers. All they do is infrastructure. Others are actually upgrading themselves, and they're not upgrading, but they're expanding their services, and they're also offering, actual business services to Web 2. They could run this, and they could build their own pricing model, right? Our goal is not to set a price because we want an open market. That's a long-term strategy. And that's also the reason why we focused on Avalanche, because we can create multiple L1s, and one L1 could be servicing the US, another L1 could be servicing, let's say, Germany, right? So it's not limited, or it could be an L1 is run by an enterprise, right? It could be completely a single entity, because in our network, we want anyone to be able to spin up their own instance and have the tooling, as long as they use our network, right? As long as they use the software in the network, will take a piece of the transaction fee, then we're fine. And the goal is to build a network that through the community can stand up against some of these hyperscalers. I'm also realistic in the sense that I don't believe we can replace. I think we can augment, and we should focus on new use cases that care about all the benefits that blockchain provides. And the programmability is still so nascent, but so interesting and so powerful that I think that's where the differentiation will be in the long term.
I really appreciate you for kind of going over that, Stefan, because I was kind of researching into the different costs, and these things can get kind of wild, but it's like you said, the overall infrastructure technology has gotten better. So why haven't those cost savings been passed down to the ultimate end user? So I really, really love how you're kind of doing your model instead, where it's kind of more of an open market feel. Sorry, Justin, I didn't want to hijack it too much. I can pitch it back to you if you got some more questions you want to.
No, I think everybody's getting a cloud hyperscale 101 here from Stefan. So if you're tuning in, you're definitely getting some good knowledge, because I don't think many people know how the sausage is made when it comes to cloud services, right? We just automatically assume that when we turn on Netflix, the show pops up, but in the background, it's all running on AWS. They're spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on cloud storage and compute. And in the background, if you're a new upstart and you're looking to get started, some of those cloud bills can be cost prohibitive. I talked to a bunch of teams who are looking for credits from cloud providers, and I'm happy that I can now direct them to Akabe for some of their storage needs. I did want to touch on the DPIN aspect, Stefan. So obviously this bit is coming. It's more future facing, but you've kind of broken down, how the general community can participate in Akabe in the future, should they have any storage capacity available. Help me understand and help us all understand, a little bit more about the localized networks. I think that's really important. Most people don't really realize that there's, US East 1 in Virginia, US West 2 in Oregon, and a billion different little points of presence all around close to you where data is cached. Can you help us understand and show us like what that looks like on the regionalized DePIN networks?
Yeah. So a couple of things, right? So the hyperscalers, they have very well-established data centers in certain locations that are very strategic, and they only open a data center once they have like 80% committed, right, from their customers. Now, with one of the benefits of blockchain and community-powered infrastructure is that you can spin up smaller instances locally. And why that is important is because now with DePIN, what I mean with DePIN is you're seeing a lot more DePIN networks show up, right? Some examples are HiveMapper, SkyMapper, which is collecting data from space or like observing space. You see others collecting video content, or like you look at 375 AI, they're collecting traffic data. So all of this is very rich content that's being captured at the edge somewhere, right? In some random location. It could be at a billboard, it could be at someone's home. The point is, it's not close to any of these large data centers that are very strategically located. And so that also means that is an unserved market, and is a market that could benefit from more localized capacity and infrastructure, because it provides lower latency. Two, maybe the cost in that country is lower, or maybe the infrastructure provider, the node provider that's running this, is sharing its infrastructure with other services that it's offering, and so it can be more competitive. And so that's why there's more opportunity at the edge as well, to supplement that infrastructure with what we're building. And these DePIN networks a lot of these new DePIN networks are focused on the edge, because that's something that hasn't been done. Look at the drones, right? Look at Spexy collecting, drone data. And so there's just a bunch of new stuff that's coming out. And all of this data is super valuable, because why are you collecting it? Why are they collecting it? Because they're selling it. And so when you're selling it, you want to make sure attribution is going towards those that actually collected the data. And one of the problems we've seen there is that it's really hard sometimes to make sure that you're transparent to your community and you track accurately on an object level or on a file level or a video level the contribution that the content contributor has delivered. And so the point here is that by moving data on chain, from the moment it gets captured, you can kind of track its life cycle and be more accurate in attribution as well, versus uploading it into the cloud, doing your analysis, spit out a report and tell the community, well, my report says you're going to make $100 today, or you're going to make $0. So I think that the verifiability, the transparency that we can provide as well as part of this is super important. And that's important for these DePIN networks, because they care about their community, they care about doing the right thing. And so that's a unique segment that's growing, and it's only been growing in like the last 2 years, I would say, because again, AI is now is driving the demand for more data sets. Because I don't know if you know, but in general, like most of these LLMs are kind of stuck because they need more data, and you either generate the data, which you can do, and that's what is being done now. You run simulation and you generate data and use that to train your LLMs, or you get access to brand new data sets that have never been captured, and that's what these DePINs are doing.
Can I steal this one, Justin?
Please.
I appreciate you, brother. Stefan, I really kind of want to talk about this integration with Filecoin, because I think it's pretty interesting, the architecture that you've kind of set up. Can you explain like why you decided to integrate with Filecoin as like a cold storage layer, and then actually do me a favor and explain what a cold storage layer is.
Yeah. So because we want to give flexibility to customers as well, and Filecoin has a lot of supply and also we come from out of that ecosystem, it was naturally also a good fit for us to integrate with Filecoin. And it is indeed a cold tier. So what that means is that when you move data from Akave into Filecoin, you now have a cheaper archive tier that is more highly secure with ZK snarks. But because the retrieval takes a few hours to retrieve it, it's more in line with an Amazon Glacier type storage layer, which means that people will store data there and then it will pull it back, but only for like archive purposes will they store it, and they will pull it back when they actually really need it. Akave is the hot layer where they run the actual dApps directly against, because the performance is faster. So yeah, it's all about providing options and at the same time offering an integration with Filecoin, which allows users that want to take advantage of Filecoin to use Akave as the on ramp, or as the hot layer in front of Akave, in front of Filecoin, to make that usable. Now, what we do on the back end is as data comes into Akave, we replicate onto the Filecoin network. Over time, we can make it more configurable so that users can kind of like go into a policy through the Akave SDK and decide which buckets to replicate or which buckets to store in which country. But we're not there yet. So today it's pretty much a standard replication. But yeah, so you can kind of see over time how this becomes more flexible and configurable.
I see. I appreciate you for going through that too. Just because some of this stuff kind of goes a little bit over my head, and you're like really, really giving out a masterclass today, my friend. So I really can we talk about some of like the early adopters, like who's using Akave Cloud today, and then what kind of compelling use cases that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, like defined storing articles, to preserve the original articles in case something or someone would try to change the reality. So we have some Web2 customers that are moving data out of AWS that are seeing more than 50% savings, specifically with the Snowflake use case, meaning bringing some of these large data sets out of the cloud and then still connecting into compute cloud services like Snowflake to do the analytics. Then we're working with a bunch of DeepIn networks as well. I can't mention yet, but we definitely have a demo with a few of those that are starting to store. We are also looking at some data marketplaces. So we have like Chakra Labs, and I don't know if you know these guys, and Baselight. These are stacks that are competing with sort of like the analytics solutions that exist in the market and are collecting data sets as well. So they're crawling the web. I think Chakra is doing that. They're crawling the web and trying to sell those. And then we have builders, right? So there's a ton of builders as well that are currently building cool projects. There's a few of those that are, and it for them, and typically those are builders that are building projects that are data heavy, meaning they really care about their data being preserved, but also they're looking to sell it. So there's some marketplaces. One of them is called Asterix Women's Health. They're really focusing on preserving and helping healthcare for women, and they're storing healthcare information. So we're definitely seeing a lot more variety because it's just a horizontal play. But the common thread is typically users or business that cares about their data, and it's at its core of its business, right? Meaning they run or sell analytics, or they sell the data itself. You're seeing a lot more people also doing analytics and selling the insights without passing on the data. Yeah.
Stefan, can you, I think one of the biggest unlocks aside from the price decrease of Akave is the programmability, obviously, which we all know with smart contracts and everything that comes along with that, but also the auditability. Can you help us understand with an example, if possible, a team that is leveraging the smart contract programmability using Akave, and then one that might be using auditability, which you can use the same example for both. I'm sure that there's a fair amount of crossover, but I want the people who are watching to understand what sort of unlocks can happen from Akave outside of just, you cut your cloud bill in by 80%.
Yeah. We haven't focused so much on programmability, so it's good that you bring it up. But the way Kave was built is that we use smart contracts under the hood for major, like pretty much any important change on the data. So, for example, when you store data in a Kave, you create a bucket, because we have the concept of buckets and objects that are attached to a wallet. So you always have a wallet that is the owner of the bucket and buckets and the objects that are stored within it. And so then you can start doing stuff with data that's stored and owned by that wallet. And typically you would just configure a policy, and a policy could be, I want to preserve my data for 3 years. That's can be enforced with a smart contract. So under the hood, we are enforcing that. Most customers, they just want to store their data and pay on a monthly basis, and they want to be able to share that data with other users. So when you share it with other users, you typically want to send out a signed URL, like a token-based URL, and you want to set a retention or you want to set access controls. Those are all enabled in smart contracts as well. So that, of course, you have to be careful with this. If you set like access controls the wrong way, that's your own fault, right? But that's also the move that we are trying to make, is that we want to move away from a central database into on-chain programmable smart contracts. So rely on code versus the admin that's running the central database. And so programmability here is implemented by Akave by using these smart contracts to enforce the policies, the access controls, and that's where it starts. Where we see the ecosystem come in and contribute is where they start building smart contracts on top of data that's referenced on chain. And they can start using some of the access control APIs, the SDKs. So we're releasing a Rust SDK as well. And they could even like create a bridge to other chains, if they want to pay in other tokens. That's all possible. But really where the interesting part is, is with these AI agents now, automatically like executing on these data sets. It would be interesting to see, because that's what we're seeing in the hackathons, right? There's a lot of them that are building AI agents that do something with the data. They're listing it, they're posting it to sell it, or they're building other UX tools around it that allow users to do something with it. And so I think this is where the programmability will be huge, because we haven't seen most of the programmability come into play yet, because it will require vertical integration into that app. But what we are providing is the base, is the foundation for it, so that users don't have to worry at least about how do I store it, because that is a hard problem that a lot of builders don't want to deal with. They just want to be able to say, just give me an on-chain hash, give me an easy interface, and give me some SDKs that I can just integrate my app with, and then I will figure out how to act on my data, how my agents will, process the data, who to share it with, and so on. And that's exactly where we want to stop. That's where the ecosystem of builders come into play. And I'm looking forward to see what's going to be built there.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And I've heard and seen firsthand many horror stories of bad permissioning of buckets, of S3 buckets. And you have these enterprises who either lose customer data, which is horrific and we see happen all the time, and or websites being taken down because they're hosted using S3. There's a whole myriad of different problems that come up here. So I think it's really cool to have an optionality to do, this on-chain auditability to see exactly who has permissions, when they were accessed, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's going to actually be maybe not like a major unlock per se, but something that's just going to help with developer UI UX. So that'll be great. Yeah. Thanks for that answer.
Yeah, I didn't talk about the auditability. That's right. There's a whole, because we store everything on chain, you have an audit trail of all the transactions. What we need to still do there is build, to your point, build the right UX interfaces for those specific verticals, because I can read it, I can go to the browser, the Explorer, and I can understand what's happening, but a normal user won't know. So there's a lot of improvement there for visualizing it in a way that users can see, oh yeah, this is awesome, right? And it goes like, I've heard some really cool use cases where for example, what happens when you die with all your data sets? How do you pass this on to your kids or to your relatives or whoever? There's startups building that exact thing. And for that, they need programmability, because, how do you transition it? Well, there's a notary involved, and so there needs to be some validation done that, the sun is really the sun. Little things like that, but it's interesting that is now also a target market, meaning the data sets that we generate, and then who knows, our AI agents that we're going to show up with in the future will also be a valuable asset that will have to be passed on or be sold off. And so I think there's a lot more than just the videos and the images that we first think of. No, it's actually what we are going to create in the future based on it. Because if I go on a Zoom, everyone shows up with their own note taker. In the future, we're going to be showing up with multiple agents that do multiple things for us all the time. And that will also be part of our IP, our digital IP.
I want to talk a little bit about, because we're coming up on time, I want to talk about how folks can kind of get involved. So for anybody that's kind of watching this who's a builder, what's the first thing that they should try or kind of do with Akave?
If you want to, this one, if you want to connect, I put it in there. You can check this QR code. We have a Telegram builders channel. So that's this one here. And then, but the first thing you can do is start writing to an S3 bucket. Just connect with us. If you have, so you connect with us on the Telegram chat, or you can connect with us to set up a one-on-one meeting with our tech team. We have a solutions architect. We're working on real deals. So, if you have real capacity, then please let us know. We can help you. Also, our docs, check out our docs.akave.xyz. We're starting to build out more solutions, meaning we show and write out how to connect your existing applications to Akave. So if you see, if you want an application to be tested, you can also just connect with us on Telegram, because that's where the engineering team lives. It's a little bit easier. So we're pretty easy to communicate with. But we can test more applications, because right now we're seeing a bunch of applications. Like I said, video streaming. We're seeing decentralized social networks. We're seeing builders that just start collecting data sets, but and then backup. We're also seeing backup users that just want to store their backups and archives, and but they're using rclone. Like, this is why we integrated rclone, because someone was using rclone, and we're like, okay, let's test it, let's vet it. So if you want to replicate out of the cloud, you can use rclone to replicate it into Akave. And there's a bunch of tools, right? But before we say, hey, the tool is validated, we just do some validation and qualification. Sometimes ecosystem actually tests it for us. We actually have ecosystem members that are building our Python SDK, and it's fun. It's fun to see contributions from the ecosystem as well.
I know that's got to feel amazing when you're just kind of building out this community and you start seeing the community start to contribute toward the overall growth. It's got to feel really good inside.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's also fun to see like some of the first startups that because our first hackathon was at DEF CON in Thailand. That was when we first announced it. And some of these projects are growing, and some of them are now like building out on Agave, and it's really cool to see that, right? They're from, yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I mean, as a founder, it's fun to see other founders succeed.
Yeah.
So,
that's beautiful. And Stefan, I really, really appreciate you for like being willing to join us today. I'm going to open things up really quick just for closing remarks. And I'm going to pick on you first, Justin, then we'll pitch it over to Stefan to wrap things up. But you got any closing remarks for the people out there, my friend?
I would just say you have a great opportunity here. You have a great team and a great founder with Agave. I would, if I were in the community, and I am, I would experiment with Agave as a builder. I think there's a number of different ways you can leverage them and their technology, not only just getting your costs down, but also building something new and unique, right? This is a new primitive where you can start to really, create programmable data. You can start to build new apps around your data that you've never been able to do before. And then also, I think there's a fair amount of opportunity on the DPIN side, right? So as Agave starts to mature and flips on their regional L1s and therefore their regional storage layers, I think it's a great opportunity for the community to participate there. We didn't talk about it today, but maybe for a future time, and I'm sure Stefan doesn't want to talk too much about it, but is there going to be a token in the future? How are you going to incentivize people to actually run those nodes? I'm sure just based off of how other DPIN protocols do it, I think the community can arrive at the proper answer there. But yeah, Stefan, thank you so much for joining here. We're really excited to have you in the community. You are one of our tier 1 and first DPIN protocols to launch. So we're very excited. And I think you're going to set the tone for future teams who are looking to build on Avalanche. And I think it's an architecture that's unique and will be really interesting to see how people begin to emulate in the future. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I would say look, we love anyone to participate in the network. We believe that this is not done by us. It's done by a community. So very community focused. Our strategy is indeed to have a token. Otherwise I wouldn't have taken this on. Very big believer of enabling others. And the way we started is by building the Agave cloud in a permissioned way, and then eventually we'll decentralize that. And so I would love to hear feedback from anyone that has, some interesting feedback already from other networks or other teams. Please share them with us on Telegram. Please participate, because right now you're still at the early stages where you can have impact as well on the design. And in this, Justin was saying, we're seeing a lot more smaller DPIN projects popping up. And so now is a good time when you're starting to build your project and you need some free capacity, you want to play around with it, to reach out to us and we can help you with this, because it's easier to do it in the beginning when you're designing your architecture from the ground up than to trying to patch it later on. And we can also show you how we've helped other DPIN networks with their design. Looking forward to feedback and collaborating in the Avalanche ecosystem and getting to know some of the cool projects that are being built right now on Avalanche. So very excited, and thank you, Justin and Brevi, for having us, and looking forward to also many more of these sessions. So thank you for inviting me.
I want to say thank you, my friend. You just gave out a full professional college class on cloud services and where it's going in the future, where it was, and everything about Agave and the importance of these kind of more kind of decentralized networks. So I really, really appreciate you, my friend, for being willing to pop on and being so forthcoming with all the knowledge that you've kind of accrued over the years. Appreciate you too as well, Justin, man. Thank you so much for being willing to pop on as well, man. That excitement is emphatic Me and me go. And also, oh yeah, Justin, you got it.
I was just gonna say it's easy to be excited when you're working with teams like Akave. So.
And then for my audience out there, just in case you kind of just came in towards the end or something like that, don't you folks worry. Once we end the stream, you'll be able to run it on back so you can watch everything. You don't want to miss anything that Stefan said, because man, he gave out a masterclass, my friends. And just in case you want to watch it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I'll be putting it up there as well for you folks out there. Oh
Nice.
yeah, I got you. I got you. And then also for the folks out there, I got one more thing for you. Bam! Make sure you follow at Akave Cloud so you can stay up to date with everything the folks are building over there. And I'm going to give you a quick pro tip. Come here, come close. Look. So you want to hit bell notifications, my friend. Bell notifications. The reason why, that way you get notified whenever Akave Cloud posts, so you can make sure you stay up to date with everything that they're doing and that you don't miss anything. Again, thank you folks so much for coming. I'm going to end this thing simply by saying peace.
Yes.